California at $5 a user. I had about 1,000 pages of documents I sent to the federal government on time for this application, and they rejected it because I was missing 2 or 3 pages. And it was $5 per user in federal matching funds to provide high-speed broadband to the entire Central Valley. It was a $4 million federal grant with $8 million in private capital and a $4 million federal loan. And so it really was a very civic-minded project, because you don't make a ton of money necessarily providing broadband out in the sticks. And this is a project that's only 25% grant. The rest of it's all money that has to be paid back, $2 out of $3 of which are private. And this project was rejected without any request back to me. And projects were funded that were $800 per household, $15,000 per household, as much as 30, 150, 1,500 times more expensive per user. But they had complete forms, and that's, heard. And the idea was, okay, come back in the second round. The second round, I had some public sector partners that just suddenly disappeared on me right before the filing deadline. I will say, in the defense of that program, that it was a really interesting application in the second round. It was a really good application. It helped me understand my business better, just like any time you go through the process of preparing a business plan would. But this was interesting because it was like the VCs sending you advice about broadband, internet, and wireless specifically. These things were in this application, specific issues for our industry. And that's usually with a VC, they're not going to give you that kind of feedback. So it was interesting that they took these public comments, the expert comments after the first round. So, I wasn't completely freaked out about all of it, but gradually, the more I've been watching, the more I see this set of compromised individuals, which seems to be the majority of Congress, and then on the periphery, people unafraid to say what they really think. Like Ron Paul on the Republican side, for me, is my new person who I'm really fascinated by, because I studied Hayek and the Austrian economists after I'd built an economic theory. And I felt that I had refuted Hayek. I could prove how Hayek was wrong, but now, after listening to Paul, I realized I'm dealing at a communitarian level about social problems. In other words, I might raise money to buy a hospital, to train university students, to provide clinic. In other words, help people become independent. And not that I would be a philanthropist so much as I would be involved in providing the services that a laissez-faire government doesn't provide to people, the basics, so that people are not dependent on the government. And then from that base, they can go out and do whatever they want. So figure out how at the community level to let people buy into some kind of a pool that will deliver them services. And the beauty of it is, if you don't like one pool, you can go into another pool. So these are essentially buying rings for necessities. That's what I'm thinking. And this relates back to this idea I had before of creating this sort of paradise where no one had to work because we had everything automated with robots, which certainly is possible at some point in the future. So I had this idea in the past about a community-based government, and the federal government would have been a burden on this community government. The community government didn't need to exactly be a government. It could be more like a co-op. So if you were going to provide your own high-quality school, you were involved in investing in a K to PhD university with a medical school and a bank and an insurance company. And then a local agriculture co-op. And you were invested in all of these things. You contributed labor, you put in some startup money. You basically had all these things covered and were working about a quarter time. And this is the complement to libertarianism. Because in libertarianism, you have a problem of assuming that the private sector, because we're more efficient at generating wealth, will take care of the unfortunates in some fashion. And it's not really clear exactly how. But we know, going back in history, that having no social safety net, at times was extremely scary and painful for lots of people. So what is the new way we look at the government who governs least, governs best, and why am I at this point already? Well, what we saw with Obama is we saw one of our best and brightest hurled at Washington. What I find is that as people get into the top 1%, where all the money and power is, they get corrupted by it. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. They get into the elite, and they start thinking like the elite. And in Obama's case, he has powerful forces he has to deal with. So I just threw up with it. I'm sick of it. If I can get out of this and just gut the government so that I'm on board, because we have these horribly corrupt elections. We have this horribly corrupt political system. We have these problems with these bills that came out from Obama, these horrendous compromises that spend huge amounts of money and on this stimulus, even though it's really the jury's out. The good thing about the broadband stimulus is you got a lot of people thinking about building networks. The bad thing is that the networks that were funded were definitely not funded the way that they would have been in the private sector. They were funded differently and worse. They were funded worse because there is no music to the way these people evaluate things. There is no equilibrium. It's arbitrary based on certain targeted criterion. So it's almost like conducting a guerrilla war on your own population of businesses, because, or terrorism on them, because for every 3 that go for the grant, only 1 will get it. So you have 2 disappointed parties for every party you make happy. And then for every 3 that applied, 3 didn't apply. And those people, when they hear that these other folks got money, are going to be annoyed. So you've basically got 5 people at various stages of annoyed. The one guy who's now your partisan. So it alienates people when you target these promotions. And it's easy to create formulas to solve these problems, at least I think it is, which is that it's an X over Y, so you create a curve. What does that mean? It means you say, we give every business in America a loan based on a criterion. You have a curve. That would be one way to stimulate the economy without picking winners and losers. Or you could say, and we will, and then when you start getting down, we'll only fund this and we'll only fund that. And we'll, the more you do that, the more you're going to infuriate people and distort the economy. So, in economics, whether you're a Marxist or a fascist or a Chinese central planning capitalist or whatever, when your numbers really line up to be able to accommodate any kind of scenario, there's a certain beauty to it, and you feel like this is right. So an example of that would be in the case of the business investment. So we want to pump money in the economy to get people to hire more people. Well, why not let them decide how to expand their businesses in terms of just a neutral aspect of business expansion? Then you can slope the money towards certain scored metrics of renewable energy over oil if you want, but even that is a hack. But let's say that you did have some sloping of the money towards certain industries, but all industries were eligible to receive it. Then you could offer credits to the businesses, and so what that would mean is that instead of tax credits, you could literally essentially have negative credits, which means you send them money. You match funds for them to do expansion of their businesses, maybe $1 to every $2. So there are ways of doing this that allows the market to decide what projects to invest in, and that is people who have skin in the game. Now the stimulus projects, they wanted to show skin in the game, but most projects didn't have to make economic sense for the investors that had skin in the game, because the amount of federal money was so huge compared to the private money that you could basically repurpose the asset and sell it a different way. So you get the point, if you understand. So I started with saying, yeah, we're going to have things like the Peace Corps and better education, and the more I watch all of this, although I do give kudos to for the education initiative, the more I look at all of this,